This girl comes home from a mental hospital and immediately starts fighting with her evil stepmother who's been torturing her little sister. But here's the crazy part. When she finds a bloody sack being dragged around the house and starts stabbing people with scissors, you realize something's seriously wrong. Because her sister's been dead this whole time, and she's been fighting herself the entire movie. The story opens in this gloomy mental hospital where we meet Sumi, this girl who's just sitting there with her hair completely covering her face. She won't say a single word to the doctor who's trying to get her to talk. The doctor shows her this family photo and keeps asking what happened to land her in this place, but she just sits there in total silence. You can tell by looking at her that something really messed up went down. The next day, Sumi finally gets released. Her dad picks her up along with her younger sister Suyeon, who everyone calls Cutie cause she's this sweet innocent kid. When they pull up to their house out in the woods, both sisters just stand there not wanting to go inside. They're totally dreading seeing their stepmother again, so instead they run off to this lake nearby and hang out there until it gets dark. Eventually they got no choice but to head back home, and that's when we meet the stepmother Yunyo. This woman is fake as hell. She's trying to act all nice and welcoming, but you can see she's forcing every word. The whole greeting is super awkward and tense, and the two sisters just walk past her to their rooms without saying anything. When Sumi gets to her bedroom, she starts unpacking but gets totally freaked out when she finds an exact copy of her diary already sitting on her desk. Like, how's that even possible? Then she opens her closet and all her clothes are hanging there perfectly organized. Someone's been in her room doing stuff while she was gone. That evening the whole family sits down for dinner and nobody's talking. The silence is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Finally the stepmother breaks it by announcing she invited Sumi's uncle and aunt over for dinner tomorrow. Sumi immediately gets irritated and calls out the stepmother for going through her room and organizing her stuff without permission. But here's where it gets weird. The stepmother swears she didn't touch anything. She claims Sumi's clothes were already hanging there and she never went in the room. Sumi gets pissed and says she refuses to see her uncle and aunt, then storms off upstairs. Cutie follows her sister, and Sumi tells her to immediately report it if their stepmother ever bothers her. That night, poor Cutie's trying to sleep when she hears these strange noises outside her room. Her door slowly creaks open and this creepy female hand starts sneaking around it. The kid gets scared and yanks her covers over her head, but then someone starts pulling the blanket away from her. When she finally gets brave enough to look around, her room's completely empty. She's so freaked out she runs to her sister and says someone was in her room. Sumi goes to investigate but doesn't find anything suspicious. She heads downstairs to grab some water and finds her dad sleeping on the sofa. As she's covering him with a blanket, the stepmother catches her and tells her not to wake him up. They start arguing right there in the living room, and Sumi walks away totally frustrated. She goes back to comfort Cutie and they end up sleeping together. While she's sleeping, Sumi has this insane nightmare about her dead mother. She also sees these disturbing visions of a bloody hand clawing at the floor like it's trying to escape from something terrible. When she wakes up, she sees this horrifying woman with long black hair crawling across the floor like some kind of spider. The woman notices Sumi watching her and slowly stands up to face her. Sumi's frozen in pure terror as this thing starts approaching and hovering right over her bed. She's cowering under the covers when she notices blood dripping down the woman's legs. Then this hand suddenly appears from under the woman's dress, and finally Sumi jolts awake for real. It was all just a nightmare, but it felt so real. When morning comes though, she finds actual blood on the bed and on Cutie's shorts. Turns out her little sister just got her first period. When Sumi goes to get a pad for her, she discovers the stepmother is also on her period that exact same day. Then she feels blood in her own pants too. What are the chances that all three women in the house would start their cycles on the same day? That's just bizarre. Later that day, Sumi's looking through old family photos and makes this shocking discovery: their stepmother used to be a nurse. Not just any nurse though, she was specifically the one who took care of their terminally ill mother before she died. That revelation makes everything about this woman even more suspicious and creepy. Cutie comes into the room and they start going through their late mother's belongings together. There's all these old photos and personal items that bring back memories of better times. While they're looking at everything, Sumi notices these nasty bruises all over her sister's arm. When Cutie refuses to tell her who caused them, Sumi gets violent and starts shaking her, demanding she confess who hurt her. But Cutie breaks free and runs out of the room without saying a word. So Sumi marches downstairs and confronts the stepmother about the bruises. They get into this huge screaming match when the stepmother refuses to apologize to Cutie for whatever she did. Their dad overhears the whole argument and tries to calm Sumi down, but she just brushes him off. She's clearly had it up to here with this woman and her father's refusal to do anything about it. The next evening, the uncle and aunt show up for dinner like the stepmother planned. She starts telling this long story and gets all hysterical and overly cheerful about it, but everyone else is just sitting there silent and uncomfortable. The uncle says he has no idea what she's talking about, which makes her snap back to her normal cold personality instantly. Then out of nowhere, the aunt starts grabbing at her throat and collapses to the floor. She's convulsing and thrashing around like she's having some kind of seizure or panic attack. Her husband and Sumi's father rush to help restrain her while the stepmother just stands in the kitchen screaming as she watches it all go down. After they finally get the aunt calmed down with some medication, she and her husband decide to leave immediately. On their drive home, the aunt tells her husband something really disturbing. She says during her episode, she saw a girl hiding under the kitchen sink. The way she says it, you can tell she's completely freaked out by whatever she witnessed. Back at the house, the stepmother's cleaning up when she notices the sink cabinet suddenly swing open by itself. She slowly walks over and closes it, then gets down to check underneath the sink. She doesn't find anything under there, but when she turns around, there's suddenly a girl sitting at the dining room table behind her. She slowly turns to look at the table, but now nobody's there anymore. As she's standing back up, she spots a hair clip on the floor that wasn't there before. She reaches down to pick it up, but this bloody hand shoots out from under the sink and grabs her arm. She pulls herself free in absolute terror and spins around to find herself face to face with that same girl from the dining table. She's so shaken up that she tells her husband about all the strange things happening since the girls came back, but he doesn't believe any of it. That same night, the father discovers the stepmother's pet bird dead in its cage. The stepmother also sees the dead bird while she's secretly watching him from the shadows, and it sends her into a complete rage. She storms up to Cutie's room to get revenge, and when she gets there she finds that someone has vandalized all the family photos by scratching out her face with black ink. She yanks poor Cutie right out of bed and finds the corpse of her other pet bird stuffed underneath the covers. She completely loses it and starts attacking the kid before dragging her over and locking her inside the bedroom closet as punishment. Sumi wakes up hearing all the commotion outside her room. When the stepmother finally leaves, she runs to check on Cutie and finds the room completely destroyed. She opens the closet door and discovers her terrified little sister crying inside. Sumi pulls her out and hugs her tight, apologizing for not hearing her screams and coming to help sooner. She promises Cutie this kind of thing will never happen again. The next morning, after the father buries the dead bird in the yard, he confronts both his daughters about what's been going on. He asks Sumi directly why she keeps acting out and causing so much trouble. She lashes out and tells him it's all because of his wife who won't stop harassing and hurting Cutie. The father looks completely stunned and tells her to stop talking, but she just keeps going and getting more worked up. Finally he's had enough and shouts at her to shut up. Then he drops this massive bombshell that changes everything. He tells Sumi that Cutie has been dead for a long time now. Sumi's in complete denial and refuses to believe what he's saying. She turns to Cutie who's standing right there sobbing beside her and tells her their dad is lying, but Cutie just keeps crying and can't be consoled. The next day, the father makes a phone call and invites someone to come over to the house. Meanwhile, the stepmother starts doing something absolutely horrifying. She's dragging this huge bloody sack around the house, leaving a trail of blood everywhere. Then she takes out a crowbar and starts beating the sack viciously like she's trying to kill whatever's inside it. Sumi gets woken up by all the noise and finds a note from her father saying he had to leave the house but he'll be back soon. She runs out of her room and hears Cutie's voice calling for help from somewhere in the house. When she gets downstairs, she's absolutely horrified to see this trail of fresh blood all across the floor. She follows the blood trail through the house and discovers that bloody sack just lying there on the floor. She frantically tries to untie the ropes to see what's inside, thinking it might be her sister, but the knots are tied too tight and she can't get them loose. She runs to the kitchen searching for a knife or something sharp to cut it open. While she's looking through the kitchen drawers, she suddenly sees this flash of a vision, herself standing there beating that same sack with the crowbar. The vision only lasts a second, but it's enough to really mess with her head. When she goes back to where she left the sack, it's completely gone. She follows the blood trail again and this time it leads to a closet where she finds the sack stuffed inside. As she reaches out to open it, the thing suddenly moves on its own, which scares the hell out of her. At the same time, the stepmother walks into the kitchen and wipes blood off her hands before turning off this kettle that's been boiling on the stove. The stepmother picks up the boiling hot kettle and walks over to where Sumi is struggling with the sack. She tries to pour the scalding water right on Sumi's head, but Sumi reacts quick enough to knock the kettle out of her hands. In desperation, she grabs a pair of scissors from somewhere and stabs the stepmother right in the hand. They start having this brutal fight, wrestling and throwing each other around. Sumi gets slammed against a glass door while the stepmother falls down on these scattered fish hooks that are all over the floor. When Sumi tries to run away, the stepmother manages to grab her feet and trips her up. She falls hard and smacks her head on the kitchen counter, which knocks her out cold. A few minutes later, the stepmother drags Sumi's unconscious body out to the living room. While she's barely conscious and drifting in and out, Sumi sees the stepmother dragging this heavy garden statue into the house. When she finally wakes up completely, she finds the stepmother kneeling right beside her with this creepy look on her face. The stepmother tells her that she'll never be able to escape her past or forget her memories no matter how hard she tries. She stands up and grabs that heavy statue, lifting it high over Sumi's head. She's about to drop it and crush her skull when the father suddenly comes home and walks through the front door. When he enters the house, he sees Sumi lying unconscious on the ground with pieces of the broken statue scattered all around her. He helps her up to her bedroom to recover, then starts looking around the house to figure out what the hell happened. He finds that bloody sack inside the closet and opens it up, but there's only a small doll inside covered in blood. He goes to check on his wife and finds her sitting in the living room. He tends to her wounds and gives her some medication to calm her down, then tells her all this fighting and craziness has to stop. After he leaves the room, the door suddenly swings open by itself and the stepmother becomes absolutely terrified. She sees another version of herself dressed in a business suit standing in the doorway. This other stepmother calls out Sumi's name, and the camera swings around to show that Sumi is actually sitting on the couch where the bloodied stepmother had just been moments before. Sumi's in complete shock as she starts having these intense flashbacks. She sees herself dragging that sack across the floor and beating the doll inside it with the crowbar. She remembers killing the pet bird with her own hands. Most importantly, she realizes she came home from the mental hospital completely alone. There was never any sister with her because Cutie died a long time ago. She finally remembers her actual diagnosis: dissociative identity disorder and schizophrenia. All the events over the past few days were just hallucinations caused by her severe mental illness. The evil stepmother we've been watching this whole time was just Sumi's twisted version of how she imagines the real stepmother, not how she actually is. Feeling completely defeated, she takes 2 pills that are in her hand to try and stabilize her emotions. After that, she gets taken back to the mental hospital where she belongs. Outside her room, the real stepmother is waiting and actually looks worried about her condition. She watches her husband talking with doctors and specialists, then enters Sumi's room. The real stepmother tries to comfort her and explains they can take better care of her in the hospital, and that they'll visit her often. When she stands up to leave the room, Sumi suddenly grabs her arm and holds on tight. The stepmother eventually manages to pull herself free and they both leave her alone. In her hospital room, Sumi starts seeing Cutie's ghost again. That night, back at the house, the stepmother is sitting alone in the dining room when she hears strange noises coming from upstairs. She goes up to investigate and enters Cutie's bedroom, where she gets startled by a shadow moving behind the curtains. When she walks over to check what's behind the curtains, the bedroom door suddenly slams shut and all the lights go out. In the pitch darkness, she hears the closet door creaking open. As she approaches the closet and opens it wider, Cutie's vengeful ghost emerges from inside. The stepmother falls backwards in absolute terror as the ghost starts crawling slowly toward her across the floor. The ghost ends up killing the stepmother, though this might also be part of Sumi's ongoing hallucinations since she's still mentally unstable and filled with hatred. The movie then shows us what really happened through flashbacks. Little Cutie was alone in her room when the closet door opened by itself. She walked over to close it but discovered her mother's dead body hanging from a rope inside the closet. Their terminally ill mother had found out that her husband was having an affair with their nurse, who later became their stepmother. The humiliation and betrayal made her decide to end her own life. When Cutie found her mother, she tried desperately to save her and free her from the rope. But instead of helping, she accidentally pulled the entire heavy cabinet down on top of herself. She struggled and fought to escape from underneath it, but couldn't lift the massive weight off her small body. That struggling bloody hand Sumi kept seeing in her nightmares was actually her sister's hand trying to claw her way out from under the cabinet. The loud crash and Cutie's screams for help brought the stepmother to investigate. When she entered the room, she saw the fallen cabinet and could hear someone trapped underneath it crying for help. She was shocked by what she found and initially hesitated about whether to help or not. She actually started to leave the room at first. But as she was deciding to go back and help save Cutie, she ran into Sumi in the hallway. Sumi was furious and told the stepmother to stay out of their lives and leave their family alone. This made the stepmother angry, and she warned Sumi that she would regret saying those words someday. Meanwhile, Sumi stormed out of the house in complete rage, unknowingly abandoning her little sister who was slowly dying under the weight of that cabinet. Because of their argument and Sumi's angry words, the stepmother decided not to go back and help Cutie after all. So the truth is that Sumi's overwhelming guilt about not being there when her sister needed her most, combined with learning about her father's affair and discovering her mother's suicide, completely destroyed her mental state. She created this elaborate fantasy where she and Cutie came home together and the stepmother was this evil monster who tortured them. In reality, she'd been alone with her father the entire time, having conversations with people who weren't there and doing crazy things like beating up a doll while thinking it was her sister's body. But even though most of it happened in her broken mind, the house really was haunted by Cutie's spirit, and in the end that ghost finally got revenge on the woman who could have saved her but chose not to.